Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
I think it's a mission that resonates with everyone, just helping families get through some of the hardest times in their life.
The slogan says it all. It's a home away from home. And they're with people in similar circumstances so they can share, they can understand each other.
TDS has really always been there standing side by side RMHC Manitoba, and that's an incredible gift that they've given to families over the decades that we've been here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have a great guest with us. We have David Van Deynze from MASC. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
How are you today?
Fine. The sun is shining. The rain has stayed away. Producers are working away. It's a great day.
I know. I was thinking the exact same thing when I got into my office here. I'm like, sun is shining. People are in the fields. It's finally starting to feel really good.
Absolutely.
And I think for you can relate, and probably anybody in this world, with the whole COVID pandemic and the lockdown. I feel that we're slowly starting to come out of that, and especially in agriculture, farmers are in the field. I think everybody's starting to feel a little bit better.
There's no doubt producers have had to, go about their business despite what's going on around them, and farming must go on, and they're certainly doing their best to make that happen. So that's a good thing.
Amen. Okay, so we have David joining us on the show today as part of our risk management series. We all know that farming is risky business, and now more than ever, we are learning that with COVID hitting us. So I would say back even before COVID, I started the risk management series to bring you, the farmer, all the best tools that we can use to manage risk on our operation. And I have David on to speak about crop and forage insurance. So I'm really excited to explore that. Are you ready?
Let's make it happen.
Excellent. So why don't we dive right in, and we'll start with crop insurance, and then we'll roll into forage insurance as the second part of this interview. So can you speak to the different types of crop insurances and go from there?
Sure. I think it starts out, once a producer has a contract with us, it essentially guarantees that they'll have a specific crop yield and quality guarantee for the crops that they're growing. So, if they're growing wheat or canola, we'll guarantee a certain level of production, and then they'll know that going into the season is what their level of production is and what their guarantee is. Producers, before we get to that point, they do have some choices to make. They can choose what crops they have insurance on. So if they feel like they want insurance on their entire farm, they'll pick all the crops that they grow. If they think they only need insurance on canola or on wheat, they can tailor their insurance that way as well. We do offer insurance on over 60 crops, so there are some choices there to make.
Wow.
The other thing that producers need to decide is what level of insurance they want. We calculate what we determine to be an expected yield for each producer, and their choice is whether or not they want insurance based on 50, 70, or 80% of that expected yield. So for new producers, that expected yield is typically an area average type of calculation. But for any producers that we have experience with, we take the information that they provide to us and we calculate an expected yield based on their history with us. So it's much more tailored to them once they've been in the program for a while. One of the exciting things we're pretty excited about anyway is new for 2020, we've introduced what we call yield trending. So previously, a producer's expected yield is based almost entirely on a 10-year average of their own yields. But we all know that as technology has been improving and varieties have been improving, yields have been going up somewhat every year. So finally, in our calculation for a number of crops, we're recognizing that. So yields for producers are not based entirely on their 10-year average. There's actually a calculation in there to recognize how things are improving technology-wise, variety-wise, those sorts of things. So it's pretty exciting from our perspective.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So in addition to straight yield guarantee that I think most producers are fairly familiar with, we do offer a few other things like a reseeding benefit Again, at this time of year, producers are actively planting their crops. If for whatever reason that crop doesn't come up, or it does come up and maybe flea beetles get it or something like that, we offer a reseeding benefit. So give them an indemnity that they can use to help pay for the cost of seeding a second time if that's in fact what they need to do. So
Okay.
it's one of those features that gets used from time to time for sure, and depending on the year. Again, hopefully this year producers won't need that, but that's what it's there for.
Quick question.
Yep.
I'm calling this the 101 because we do have some producers that don't take crop insurance. I'm not a crop gal, so I'm going to plead ignorance on this. The reseeding benefit, would that cover a frost kill?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the big components that we have. So again, anytime that frost takes out a canola crop, quite typically, we'll send adjusters to have a look and get some producers some cash to help them reseed that crop. So.
Okay, and then that's purchased with the reseeding benefit, not part of the main part of crop insurance?
Well, when they pay a premium for their crop insurance, again, when they pay a premium for their canola, included within that is a reseeding coverage as well. Not only the yield coverage at the end of the year, but some reseeding coverage as well. So it's all part of the same package.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for doing the 101 here.
The next piece of it, and we've had a little bit of rain here lately, and some areas are still fighting some pretty wet conditions. So again, a standard feature of our program is the excess moisture insurance program, commonly known as the Too Wet to Seed program. So producers are eligible for an indemnity if they in fact just can't even get on the land to seed it. So there's some coverage there. Standard program comes with $50 per acre coverage. Producers have some options if they want to purchase it up to $75 or $100 per acre coverage, they can do that. But again, it's that coverage that allows them at least some revenue if they are in fact unable to seed. So an extra piece of the program there. So yeah, again, our program covers all we call natural perils. So any weather-related event that causes a loss for a producer is what's included in terms of coverage. So again, we already talked about frost. It can be just a cool, wet season where the yields are poor, so it's just generally a poor yielding year. That's sort of covered. Things like fire, insects, those types of things are covered as well. So if it's caused by Mother Nature, that's where we can step in and help producers for their loss.
Okay, excellent. That's a lot of good stuff. Thank you for sharing that.
All right.
I am curious. I know crop insurance is well adopted in Manitoba. Do you have a percentage? How many farmers purchase?
Yeah, so we have about 7,700 farmers that purchase insurance in Manitoba. From an annual crop perspective, we believe that somewhere around 90% of the acres are covered in our insurance program. So
okay.
Very widely adopted, and so I think most producers are pretty familiar with it. Again, it's been a staple on a lot of farms, and producers generally seem to accept it quite well and understand it quite well. We do get feedback from time to time that suggestions for improvements and those types of things that we certainly take under advisement and try to do what we can.
Okay, perfect. And question for you, because we are right across Canada in our viewership and the people that visit our website. So when a farmer is in Alberta or Ontario, I assume each province has a crop insurance program administered by the government?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, good.
So there are differences. The provinces have some latitude to design their own programs. Obviously, as you grow crops across Canada, there's a lot of variation in the types of crops. So each province has latitude to kind of tailor their program to what they feel like their farmers need. But at the end of the day, there are some commonalities certainly between all the programs.
Okay, excellent. When your reps are out there speaking to farmers, are there any parts of the program that people often misunderstand, have frustrations with, anything that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, so one of the things that sometimes is misunderstood is when producers are looking at a challenging crop situation, they'll often call MASC or crop insurance to find out what they should do in their minds, I think. And the reality is we try and stay away from that ultimate decision about what to do with the crop. We feel like our role is to go there and tell the producer what we think the potential yield is for that crop. And at the end of the day, it's that producer's decision whether he's going to destroy it or keep it to harvest or try and rescue it or whatever the case may be. We will hopefully tell him what that yield is and how any decisions that he makes into the future will impact his insurance with us. So.
Okay, so that's good. You guys would be that main person at that point, right? Hey, look at my crop, it's damaged. What do you guys think I should do? Somebody comes down and helps them walk through that?
Helps them walk through that. We'll try and tell them again what we think it will yield, but we try not to tell them, this is worth keeping or it's not worth keeping, those kinds of things. We feel like there are some agronomists out there, perhaps on their own staff or people that they routinely work with, that are probably better equipped to tell them whether or not there's, some real potential or possibility of rescuing that crop, that kind of thing.
Okay, excellent. Are there any other things that you want to mention at this point about crop insurance? I know, again, a majority of our audience will be very familiar with it. I'd imagine if there's 90% adoption in Manitoba, it's probably similar across Canada. So I think we'll move on to forage insurance, but is there anything you want to add to that before we carry on?
Again, I don't know about a misunderstanding. Certainly we recognize a challenging situation for a lot of Manitoba producers with unharvested crops from last winter.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't something that they typically dealt a lot with and not something that we even deal a lot with. So there was some confusion around that piece. At the end of the day, it really boils down to whether or not the producer's in a claim or not, and it should, again, contact us prior to destroying any crop, that sort of thing. But for the most part, I think we've worked our way through it, and there was some challenges along the way, I think, for sure, but we're through most of it now, so I think that's good.
It's been an unbelievable couple of years, but I know Harvest 19, whew,
yeah.
it was not funny. That's a poor choice of words.
Right.
But when you're on social media or out talking to farmers and they want to seed, but first they need to harvest.
Yes.
That's quite the pickle to be in.
Yeah, it's not the normal order of things, that's for sure.
No. Okay, well, thank you for sharing the 101 on crop insurance. Now, why don't we move on to your forage and grazing related insurances? Can you share a little bit about those programs and how they work?
Sure. So fundamentally, our forage programs are somewhat similar to what our annual crop programs are. At the end of the day, we try and calculate an expected yield for a producer. And the producer has some options around that. As far as our forage program goes, we offer coverage on alfalfa grass mixes, grasses, sweet clovers, and what we call coarse hay, which many people call like a native hay and that kind of thing, native grasses, those sorts of things. So those are the different crop types within our forage program. The other thing we do with forages that's somewhat unique is that we recognize that newer forage stands have better potential than older forage stands. So we'll calculate an expected yield on a newer stand that is different than an expected yield on an older stand, again, to try and recognize different management practices that producers have and the different potential that those crops have. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so again, producers have some choices as it relates to forages. We have what I'll call two main forage programs that are kind of designed for producers with different risk tolerances. We have our Select Hay program and our Basic Hay program. We'll start with our Select Hay program. And that provides a production and quality guarantee on all the 5 hay types that I mentioned. So a producer might have a claim on his alfalfa grass that's independent from a claim on his grasses. There was a time when, all the forage was lumped together, and that's ultimately what our Basic Hay program looks like. But our Select Hay program separates those. So if a producer wants insurance on his alfalfa grass only, he can certainly do that.
Okay.
And if he doesn't want insurance on his grass fields, then he can deselect that and not have insurance on that basis. So there's a little bit more flexibility for those producers who like to manage their crops and their risk differently.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does. Their producers have a different focus and will different level of intensity on some of those different forage types. So that's one of the things we introduced back in 2014. We kind of reorganized our forage programs a little bit, and we introduced that feature at that time. So the other thing that producers need to pick, and again, this is similar to the annual crop program, as far as Select Hay is concerned, they need to pick whether or not they want 70 or 80% coverage of their calculated long-term average yield. So that's their option as well.
Okay.
And we've got another feature within our Select Hay program, and it applies only to the alfalfa part of it. If you're an alfalfa insurer in our Select Hay program, you can also choose our high quality option. So typically we target this for, primarily the dairy community. They're really targeting higher quality alfalfa. So there's an option within there to basically buy up the quality level within the alfalfa crop insurance package there. So that's available to our select alfalfa insurers.
Okay.
The second program that I talked a little bit about was our basic hay program. So it's a little bit different. Again, producers have some options to choose things there. But the basic hay program is basically designed as a lower cost whole farm insurance product. So again, rather than a producer who wants to select or pick insurance on his alfalfa crop and not on his grass, in this case, when you pick the basic hay option, all of your forage acres are in the mix, if you will, and are insured.
Okay.
And it combines the production from all of them. So if you have a good alfalfa crop, but you have a poor coarse hay crop, those two might offset each other, and you may or may not have a claim at the end of the day because we're mixing all of those together to determine sort of one coverage for a producer. What that does is it allows us to offer a lower premium per acre, so farmers are looking to spend a little bit less money. The basic hay option is potentially good for them. The other thing that it doesn't have is a quality guarantee. So again, as long as you're putting up hay, we consider that to be a usable bale, and we'll count that in your hay production, and could impact your claim one way or another. So again, it's designed as a lower a lower price point basic hay program for those producers who are just trying to guarantee a number of tons for their winter feed supply and to make sure that they can get through the year and that sort of thing. So the option that they have within there is either a high or a low dollar value. So again, you pick the basic hay program and you can choose whether you want a high dollar value per ton of hay or a lower dollar value a ton of hay, and just to help adjust the premium per acre that producers are required to pay.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I love this. I'm not a grain farmer, so I naturally gravitate towards forage insurance. And to be honest, we are aware of it, but we have not enrolled. So I want to ask you, here is the pain point. We in Southeast Manitoba have had 3 summers now of dry weather. Our hay production has been a fraction. I can't complain, but I'm still complaining because we got to turn around and buy that hay.
Right.
This is exactly where forage insurance comes in, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. That's what it's designed for. Again, it's a yield-based program. So if your forage yields are lower than what your long-term average is, by all means, you'd be entitled to an indemnity. And the whole design of it is to, give you the opportunity to go buy some more hay. One of the neat features of our forage programs is the hay disaster benefit, and then I'll just talk about it briefly here. It's a program that comes along and is paid by the 2 levels of government, so it doesn't cost producers any additional amount, but it's a recognition of years when the entire province is having hay production issues like we saw in 2018 and 2019. And basically that hay disaster benefit provides additional indemnity to our insured producers in those disaster years. And it's there to recognize that when hay is short right across much of the province, you either have to pay more per ton for hay to get it, or you got to pay more to get it trucked into you one way or another. So it's like a top up to your hay claim that happens in those disaster years. And like I say, in 2018 and 2019, they were both recognized as disaster years, and additional indemnities were paid to our clients. So.
And here I am sitting mentally kicking myself because I know I'm not going to put you on the spot and get you to work out numbers, but let's say we have 1,600 bales on average, right. And I forget what we ended up. I think we were under 1,000 bales. We had to go out and buy the difference. So I'm assuming we would have been looking at a pretty nice payout that we could have used for money to go and buy hay, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in rough numbers, if you have a 1,600 bale average yield, you can cover up to 80% of that. So we would have paid for the difference between your 1,000 and 80% of 1,600, and that's where that amount of money would have come to you to use to go and replace some of that hay.
I'm in pain right now.
Well,
I really am.
That's been a bit of a common theory. And again, 2018 and 19 were both some pretty extreme years. That can certainly happen again by any stretch. But yeah, for the forage community, it's been a couple of tough years. And the ones who have been insured certainly are thankful that they had something to fall back on, that's for sure. And it was helpful to those folks for sure.
Now, on the flip side, if it's too wet, same thing. You can't get your hay off because it's too wet.
Yeah, again, it's a Mother Nature peril, and we cover them all that way. So as long as it's a weather-related incident or event or season that causes a hay shortfall for you, certainly you qualify for a claim payment. So again, at the end of the day, we ask you at the end of the season how good your yield was. We'll ask you to report that information to us, and on that basis, we'll calculate whether you have a claim or not, and make an indemnity payment. So.
Oh, yeah. Can you see the pain on my face?
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And I'm floored, but you know what? Let's flip it. And this is exactly why I do this show. Because farmers are really busy, as you know, right? They wear so many hats. How do you stay on top of every single business practice program that's out there? And here, myself, in this chair, interviewing the expert is doing the exact same thing. So, wow, I am so happy to have you on the episode. And especially because when we were getting ready for this, I know, and my next question is, out of all the forage producers in Manitoba, how many actually are enrolled in the program?
Right. So again, we talked earlier about annual crop acres being somewhere around 90% enrolled in MASC insurance, and certainly forage, we think that number is closer to 20%. So, there's lots of reasons why producers may or may not want to insure their forages. Some of them have their own mitigation strategies, have their own stockpile of leftover hay and those kinds of things that they feel is their insurance for them. But certainly the 20% participation that we have in our forage insurance program is somewhat disappointing for us. We think the number could and should be higher, and we're doing some things to try and get it there. So hopefully, again, after a couple of tough years for producers, we hope that they'll see that there's some benefit in our program. And again, we don't want to see tough years on anyone, but at the end of the day, hopefully they recognize that insurance could have helped them through that situation, and at least look a little bit harder at potentially insuring their forages with us.
Right now I am fighting the urge to go to my right drawer here and grab my calculator and start calculating.
Fair enough, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, again, those were two extreme years, and certainly our payouts were as big as they have been possibly ever in our forage program in the last couple of years. So, it would have been worthwhile to be insured in forages the last couple of years for sure.
Okay. Excellent. I am so happy that I have you on, especially if I can help you guys promote the forage. I know you guys have pretty much all the acres for crop, and it's well understood. It's great to bring that as value to the new farmers out there. But if we can really promote the forage insurance, because how many people do I know, have we heard right across Canada, that are selling off animals because they can't find, well, there's probably feed out there, but it doesn't make sense to pay the cost, pardon me. And now I'm going, wow, how would their situation have changed had they had forage insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. It can certainly help. I mean, anytime you can get some additional funds to help you find hay or to help you carry through, maybe you're buying, grain instead or something like that. So certainly, we think that would have helped a lot of producers through the tough time for sure.
Okay, and I know we chat about this right towards the end, but are there deadlines on the programs?
Yeah, there is. And again, deadlines are pretty common, whether you're in the forage program or the annual crop program. But a couple of deadlines that matter if you want to enroll in crop insurance in the first place and you're not, whether it be forage or annual crops, you need to visit your MASC office by March 31st in any crop year.
Okay.
That's sort of the deadline to sort of get your application up and running. Once you've applied and you are accepted within MASC, then you don't need to apply each year. It automatically renews year over year. You just need to consider what insurance you have, and if you decide you want to cancel or make some changes to your insurance package, you need to do that by March 31st of the next year. So that's kind of that key, either application or change to your program timeline is March 31st each year. The next important deadline, I'll say, is June 30th. That's our seeded acreage report deadline. So each year we ask farmers to tell us, what they put in the ground, what they seeded, how many acres, where those acres are, what legal description, those kinds of things. And that basically forms the basis of their insurance for that year. It lets us calculate what their coverage is, lets us calculate how much premium is due, those kinds of things. So a very important document at that point.
Okay.
And sort of the third main communication that we have with our clients is November 30th. That's the deadline for them to submit their harvested production report. So when I talk about calculating expected yields for producers, that's all based on what yields they told us they grew over the last number of years. And the deadline for them to tell us how good or bad their year went essentially is November 30th each year. So that's sort of those are the three, I'll say, main deadlines that apply to all producers all the time. So.
Okay. So I'm going to be the wheelin' dealin' Tracy here. Have you guys announced a COVID extension to the programs?
Well, you know what? It's interesting. We did, but even that deadline has expired. Yeah, so there was a little window. Normally we have that March 31st deadline to apply. We extended that by a couple of weeks to give producers a bit of an opportunity to sort things out. But again, that's past mid-April or so.
Okay. Well, I will be looking at it for 2021.
Yes, that's your next option for sure.
Excellent. Okay, so when it comes to Forage Insurance, and same question as I asked you before, are there certain questions that come up? Are there things that are misunderstood about the program that you want to touch on?
Well, not so much. I mean, certainly there's a lot of challenges around the program, and there's a lot of options in our program. And again, I went through them very quickly, the basic hay, the select hay, and different things like that. And at the end of the day, we feel like we have something that should appeal to almost every producer. Not saying every producer will take insurance necessarily, but it might take some time for a producer to, completely understand which option might be best for him or her. So I would just suggest that they book some time with their MASC insurance agent to go through those options and see which, if any, kind of suit their risk tolerance the best. And because, again, it is a challenge and it is tough to understand until you actually sit down there. But it's like you've mentioned, in a year where it's fresh in your mind that you've had a shortfall, it's a good time to come and bring those types of numbers to us, and we can explain to you what that might have meant had you had insurance and what that insurance might have cost and those kinds of things. So I would just recommend producers that are at all interested, to book some time with their insurance agent and go through those things.
Okay. As soon as we get off this episode, just so you know, I'm going to the website. I'm looking at the basic forage coverage, calculating that and comparing it to what we paid in hay.
Right.
And had the extension date still been valid, you would have a new customer.
There we go.
That's okay.
For sure.
I am so happy to be bringing this episode because, like you said, 20% adoption. And we've had 3 dry years. And I know the prairies have been crazy, dry, wet. Ontario's had some excess moisture. I can't see, we got to run some numbers and look at our individual farming operations. If we have excess supply, well, maybe we don't worry about it. But quick question, can producers go in and out of it? I know you said it just renews unless you cancel, but let's say I'm March 1st and I go, oh, I have 500 extra bales from last year. I'm good. I don't think I need to pay the cost this year. Can I just phone you guys and say, I'm going to skip 2020?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways you can do that. You can outright cancel your insurance at any time effective for that crop year, as long as you do it by March 31st. Then you wouldn't have any insurance for that upcoming crop year. So you can do that for sure. The other thing you can do is what we call deselect your crops. So you can have sort of an active contract, but you can just say no thanks to any of the crops that are listed on there. Okay. Which effectively means, that you don't have any insurance on them, but you don't have to reapply then next time, which is not that onerous a task, but it just makes life a little bit easier perhaps for you to do that. So, there's a couple of options to skip a year like you're talking about for sure.
Okay. And then what did you mentioned something about the hay disaster benefit. And
Yeah, so the hay disaster benefit automatically comes along for the ride whenever you select Forage Insurance. And again, it's just this top-up situation where in disaster years we pay an additional indemnity to any of our insured clients that have claims, just to recognize that it is a disaster year and it's going to cost you more to replace forage than it would in a normal year where there's some claims but some good crops and those kinds of things.
Okay.
So again, that benefit is entirely paid by producers. I mean, one thing I should mention, and you talk about, the cost around it and trying to decide if you do, all of the insurance premiums essentially that are part of the agri-insurance or MASC's programs are cost shared by the two levels of government as well as the producer.
Okay.
So, any of the premiums that we calculate, 40% of that cost is paid by producers, 36% by the federal government, and 24% by the provincial government. So no matter how you slice it, and because we're MASC and we're not in it to make a profit over the long term, we're not a private company trying to make money. Essentially, we try to break even over time as far as our insurance program goes. So just by adding all that together, a producer's only paying 40% of the true cost of it. It should be a pretty good return on investment over time. It's not saying you're going to get a claim every year all the time, but if you're in the program long enough, it should easily more than pay for itself and even double your money, because 60% of the money is coming from two levels of government in terms of the premium cost. So it should be a good investment for all of our crops over the long term. And so if you're a young farmer and you're thinking you're going to be in it for a long time, I mean, it's a good investment over the long term for sure, and certainly helps you ride out those highs and lows that come with farming.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you don't have the numbers in front of you, please let me know. Sometimes I know when I see numbers. I'm not even a numbers person, but sometimes you just want to see the numbers. So I'll ask a question. If you don't have it handy, do not feel bad because I didn't get you to prep for this. But for the basic forage insurance, how much does that cost per acre?
It ranges a little bit based on the area you're in and that kind of thing, but it's like $3 to $4 an acre, give or take a little bit. And that'll get you, roughly $125 to $200 an acre coverage, again, depending on the region you're in, the experience that you have with us, that sort of thing. So
$4 an acre?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. You are converting me to the biggest fan ever on this protection. As producers, I'm obviously big on the content that I preach. I'm in AgriInvest, AgriStability, and we do calf price insurance. I am actually floored that us as a farm do not do this already, because that is peanuts. You don't even want to know how much we spent on hay the last couple of years.
Fair enough. Yeah, again, that's, we tried to design that program with cost in mind. So again, it doesn't come with the higher level of coverage that our Select Hay program does. But for those folks who are, certainly on a budget on a per acre basis, we hope that hits the mark for them and provides them some coverage at least, and hopefully it'll work out for you as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You are preaching to the already converted here.
Sure.
So. Anything that's misunderstood, we covered that. Do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered what I was hoping to cover today.
Okay, excellent. So my question for you, whether it's crop insurance or forage insurance, let's say you're really excited like Tracy Burnett,
yes,
who's sitting here kicking herself.
Yeah.
I know I'm too late for this year, but can we sign up already and get it going for next year so that we don't have to procrastinate and potentially forget again?
Yeah, you can. It's certainly not that common, but if you call your agent, they could get that ball rolling, which would probably result in a follow-up call of sorts in the new year.
Okay.
But you could get your name on a list to make sure you're part of a follow-up sequence, just because our application tends to change slightly year over year, and we don't have next year's application quite ready to go yet. But certainly, if we know you're interested, we can make sure that we follow up with you accordingly and make sure it happens for next year for sure.
Okay, so if somebody's interested, they would go to MASC website, they would find a rep in their area, call.
Right, we have 18 offices scattered across the province, so hopefully there's one near you, and there should be. If you're not sure where exactly that is, you're right, go to our website, www.masc.md.ca.
Okay.
And find a location nearest you, give that number a call, and our agent would be happy to help you through that process.
Excellent. We covered key dates and deadlines. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap the interview up?
No, I think when we talk about the application process, I mean, one of the things to consider is part of the application is trying to find out the independence of a producer. That's what we try and evaluate, is whether they're independent or if they are, part of another farming operation that's closely linked. A lot of the way our program works is based obviously on risk profiles, and we don't want situations where producers have multiple contracts to split risks and stuff. So we'll get into some questions to try and determine your legal or your financial or your operational independence from other people. So just be mindful of that. I think when you come, we'll ask you some questions about, who else do you farm with, and who makes the decisions on your farm, and are other people have a financial interest in your farm, those kinds of things. Not overly intrusive by any stretch, but just need to make sure we have an understanding that we're dealing with an independent farmer and not someone who is already farming in another operation somewhere or something like that.
Prime example, let's say maybe if kids farm with parents and parents are doing claims and kids are doing claims, that type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And we are cognizant of that. We try and encourage young farmers to enter the industry. I think everybody's trying to do that. So we sometimes have a slightly different lens for producers and their kids trying to take over the farm. But we still do want to see some level of independence, that's for sure. Recognizing in a sibling or in a father-son or father-daughter situation, it's not totally independent. We don't expect it to be totally independent by any stretch, but need to have at least a comfort level that, there's a long-term plan of that, that younger person trying to take over the farm at some point or start farming on their own at some point. So.
Okay, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So we covered both the programs, the crop and then the Forage In. You answered some great questions. You got a new customer guaranteed already. Anything else you want to add before we work to wrap the interview up?
No, I think that covers it. Like you say, lots of information there. If you have any specific questions, again, I'd encourage producers to contact their local agent. They can certainly get in a lot more detail about specific situations for specific customers. So, I'd encourage them to do that if they can, for sure.
And same goes for any of our listeners, viewers outside of Manitoba. Contact your government program.
Yeah.
Take it from there.
Makes sense, for sure.
Okay. Excellent, David. I am so very excited we had this interview, and I'm sure our audience feels the same way. Farming is just so unpredictable. Farmers deal with so much. I cannot imagine for such a small cost not having that as a tool to lean back on. So thank you so much for taking your time and joining us to share your wisdom today.
Perfect. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. I hope you're as excited as I am about these programs, and I look forward to seeing you on next week's episode. If you like the episode, like it, share it, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. See you next week, everyone. Bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.